board games. I love playing board games. What are some of your favorites? It's super fun to unplug from all the technology for a while and play some Monopoly, Ticket to Ride, Clue. Am I right? But when it comes to games, whether you're playing them online or at the kitchen table, some games can be really frustrating. Has there been a time when you were playing a game and you got really angry while you were playing, maybe a video game or a board game with your family and friends? Games are great, but wow, can games be frustrating. If something doesn't work immediately, like literally instantly, we tend to get super angry super quick. And while getting super angry might feel good in a moment, getting super angry and taking it out on others doesn't even really work out well for us, does it? Today, that takes us to the book of 1 Samuel. You might know the people in this story already, David and Saul. This is the same David who was anointed to become the next king of Israel and took out Goliath, the Philistine giant, with a rock and a sling. At this time, Saul was the king, but he was a pretty inconsistent ruler with massive mood swings. He wasn't the greatest king. In fact, he made a lot of choices that put other people in danger, including David. So, don't press play yet. So here are two characters. You've got Saul, King Saul, pretty good looking dude. A lot of people just said he kind of looked like a king, and that's why he was king. And then you had David. You know, David, shepherd man, becomes king, but he's not king yet. And that is where our story picks up. Now, Saul came from a really wealthy family. He was very tall, very handsome, and everyone thought that was enough to make him a great ruler. Now, King Saul was a super jealous person. And one person he was jealous of was none other than David. After David showed no fear in defeating Goliath, he enlisted in Saul's army. Even though he was young, he was gifted on the battlefield. David even won several big battles. In fact, he did so well that people cheered for David more than they did for Saul. While they cheered for Saul, they cheered even louder for David. So who do you want to cheer for? Saul? David. Saul. David. Saul. David. Saul. David. Saul. David. You get the picture. The people loved David, and Saul got extremely jealous. He looked right at David, right in his face, and he was overcome with extreme jealousy. Saul was so jealous of David and so afraid that David was going to take over his throne and become more popular than him that he decided there was only one thing to do. He had to kill David. So, Saul decided to take action. David and his men were camped in the desert of Maon. Saul decided to take his own soldiers and chase after him. Whoa! Let's stop. Stop it. Big news just came in. As Saul and his men were closing in on David, Saul received word that the Philistines were attacking Israel. He had to give up the chase and head back home to deal with the attack. However, David and his men hid out in a safe place. A messenger brought the news to Saul about David's hiding spot. We're told that Saul was so enraged that he hadn't caught David yet that he took 3,000 men to swarm where David was hiding. The goal was simple: scare him out of hiding, capture him, and put him to death. So David caught wind of this and hid in a nearby cave. Now here's where the story gets interesting. Saul and his men were looking all over the place for David, but they couldn't find him. Bye, David. Saul then told his men to halt and wait for him. Saul then crept into the very same cave where David was and his men were hiding. Thankfully for David, Saul didn't see them. In fact, Saul only went in there for one reason. Anyone have a guess why Saul went into the cave? Well, actually, Saul had to go to the bathroom. It's true. Listen to this, right from the Bible. I'm not making this up. Saul came to some sheep pens along the way. A cave was there. Saul went in to go to the toilet. David and his men were far back in the cave. David's men said, "This is the day the Lord told you about. He said to you, 'I will hand your enemy over to you. Then you can deal with him as you want to.'" Basically, David's men were telling him that God had delivered Saul into his hands. Instead of Saul killing David, now David was in a position to kill Saul, take the throne, and put an end to Saul's reign. David was really angry that Saul was trying to kill him. He was frustrated. I mean, the king he had served was turning on him in such a nasty way. If anyone had a reason to be totally angry, it was David. Maybe he should listen to his men and take Saul out. But that's not what David did. Instead, while Saul was doing his business, David crept up behind him, and instead of attacking him, David cut off a small piece of his robe and then returned to where his men were hiding. Saul never noticed. I guess he really had to go to the bathroom really bad. But after Saul was finished, he went back out and joined his men. Then David came out and confronted him. David called out to Saul. Then David bowed low. He laid down flat with his face toward the ground. Listen to what David said here. It's pretty amazing. "This day you have seen with your own eyes how the Lord handed you over to me in the cave. Some of my men begged me to kill you, but I didn't. I said, 'I will never lay my hand on my master. He is the Lord's anointed king. Look, my father, look at this piece of your robe in my hand. I cut off the corner of your robe, but I didn't kill you. See, there is nothing in my hand that shows I am guilty of doing anything wrong. I haven't turned against you. I haven't done anything to harm you, but you are hunting me down. You want to kill me. May the Lord judge between you and me, and may the Lord pay you back because of the wrong things you have done to me. But I won't do anything to hurt you. People say evil acts come from those who do evil, so I won't do anything to hurt you." So David might have been frustrated and angry. David had the chance to give into his anger, get even, and take out Saul. Instead, he honored Saul because Saul was still the king. Saul, moved by David's words, and started weeping very loudly. "My son, David, you are a better person than I am," he said. "You have treated me well, but I've treated you badly. You have just now told me about the good things you did to me. The Lord handed me over to you, but you didn't kill me. Suppose a man finds his enemy. He doesn't let him get away without harming him. May the Lord reward you with many good things. May he do it because of the way you treated me today. I know for sure that you will be king. I know that the kingdom of Israel will be made secure under your control. Now make a promise in the name of the Lord. Promise me that you won't kill the children of my family. Also promise me that you won't wipe out my name from my family line." And then we can imagine they did their most famous secret handshake. Yeah! David made that promise to Saul. And even though David had every reason in the world to take his anger out on Saul, he didn't let the anger take over. Instead, David paused. Lots of things can make us angry, right? Someone borrows something and doesn't give it back. Or even worse, takes something of yours without asking. Someone says something that hurts your feelings. Or you can't make it past a level in your favorite video game. Pretty much every time you get angry, it can all be boiled down to something not going the way you want it to go. So, instead of losing your cool and letting your anger get the better of you, just pause. Wait. Think about the wise way to respond to the situation, and maybe even ask God to help you have self-control. With God's help, you can take control of your anger instead of letting it control you.